place, Westminster Abbey. The date, July the 1st, 1997. The occasion, the memorial service to one of England's greatest sportsmen, Denis Compton, CBE. They came from sport, from the theatre, from politics to pay their respects. Tom Graveney, Jimmy Tarbuck, and the former Prime Minister, John Major.
Then, near the end, Hassett put himself on to bowl. Morris bowled from the other end, and here it comes. A four by Compton wins the match, the rubber, and the Ashes.
It comes off, thanks to the Compton brothers. From a Dennis corner, elder brother Leslie heads in the equaliser. The perfect ending to the perfect match.
After a quick knock in the nets, Compton returned. Once again, he was England's salvation. Shaky and ill as he must have been, he played like a master.
Compton saves England from ruin with a fighting 76 not out, but Australia is left with 315 to make in 2 3/4 hours.
Many thanks to everyone at Disney, and in particular, as it's a musical thing, Mr. Hans Zimmer. I'd also like to thank Denis Compton, a childhood hero of mine.
A touching moment. Sir Tim Rice's recognition of a true British sporting hero amid all the hype and nonsense of the Oscars ceremony. A tribute to a cricketer with exceptional ability, and one of the first to benefit commercially from his talent. And what a talent! In a first-class career spanning 4 decades, he made just under 39,000 runs for both Middlesex and England. In one glorious golden summer of 1947, he made 18 centuries from 50 innings. Denis Compton suffered in the latter days of his sporting career. A series of operations were necessary to repair the damage of years at the top level of sport. He always remained a charming man, with a disarming modesty and a generosity of spirit. His favourite haunt was Denham Golf Club, where he had been a member for 40 years. Listen, there's a story about how you became a member here, isn't there?
Yeah, and it's quite difficult to believe, but it's absolutely the truth. I was put up by a man called Jack Perry, who since has gone. But I was playing at Old Trafford against South Africa in 1955. And I was a Saturday evening, I was, I think, about 102 not out. And I went into the dressing room, go and have a shower and what have you, when they said, "You want it on the phone?" And I said, "Thank you." And it was the secretary of Denham Golf Club here. And he said, "Dennis, can you possibly come down tonight? And we've got some very good news for you tomorrow." And of course, to get down from Manchester in an old jalopy, took you about 5.5, 6 hours those days. Anyway, I did that. Arrived here on the Sunday morning, saw the secretary and the committee, and he said, "We have unanimously agreed, Dennis, that you become a member of this golf club." I said, "Oh, well, thanks very much, sir." And I thought to myself, why couldn't he tell me that on the phone? It's 6 hours, 5.5 hours coming down.
Now, Dennis, tell us about Mum and Dad and your brother Leslie and the sister Hilda.
Mm-hmm.
Tell us all about that early days. What did Dad do?
Dad was he had his own little painting and decorating business, very small. Yeah. Just managed to get by, but he was mad about sport, football, cricket, all sports. Right. He loved it. Mother, she knew nothing at all about sport at all. She knew that if I played it, we've got to be fed, and she was excellent at that.
Right. Now, and then Leslie was your older brother?
Yeah, he was good. He was a fine player. He was a terrific brother to me. Yeah.
And a good sportsman. Good sportsman.
Oh, was he not?
Middlesex.
I mean, if you'd have not had Hapgood and male playing for Arsenal then, I think he'd have been not only in the Arsenal side all the time, but he'd been playing lots more for England. He was brilliant.
Now, Sister Hilda, she's still alive, isn't she?
She's still alive, bless her.
Yeah.
Yes. And she also had a bit of sporting blood because she ran in the 100 yards in the English Championships when she was, I think she was 15 or 16. And yeah, ran well. Oh, she's a darling as well. I mean, I've had a lovely, friendly.
So all your childhood was a very happy
very,
time for you, was it?
Very, yes.
So when did you feel in your own that you had this extraordinary talent? You had a talent that other people didn't have, Dennis. When was this sort of started to emerge?
Well,
8 years, 10 years of age?
I did quite well when I was 10 and 11. I loved it, though. You see, I dreamt about it, cricket and football. But when I went to Lord's, there was a coach called Archie Fowler, and he became a great old friend of mine in later years. But he said to himself, he told me it this way, when you were batting in the nets, he said, everything was wrong, your feet were in the wrong place, and your pick-up is out towards cover point and all that sort of thing. But he said, you were hitting the ball for four, and he said, that's what the game's all about, so I left you.
That's how it was.
That's
But you were, I mean, you scored 100 at Lord's when you were 14 years of age, didn't you?
I did, yes, for the elementary schools against the public schools.
Well, that must be a fantastic feeling, wasn't it?
I'm trying to think who was the captain was. I think was Desmond Eager.
Oh, for the public school?
Yeah,
The old Hampshire.
Hampshire,
chap.
that's the one. Yes. And a little later, I played against Norman Yardley.
At that age?
The age of 15. Young pros versus the young amateurs, and of course Norman Yardley became the captain for England, and actually was the luckiest captain I ever played under. I never failed when I played with him. Still do that.
And tell me, Mother, when you were asked to go on the Lord's ground staff, your mother wasn't very keen, was she?
No. Well, the reason being, she said to Father, in front of me, she said, he always called him Dad. She said, Dad, this job at Lord's is only 4 months. Now, what's the boy going to do for the other 8 months? Well, I couldn't say I don't know. He did say I don't know, but let him go. She said, oh, no, I'm not having that. I'm going to get him, I want him to be in a position as a civil servant. And I can already get him into the town hall at Hendon. That was going to bore me, I know, but I didn't say anything. But as luck would have it, I got selected to play for England schoolboys at football down against Wales at Barry. And I must have had quite a good game because the Arsenal scout was there. And he phoned my father later and said, and Herbert Chapman then was the manager. And he said, Arsenal would very much like to take the boy onto the ground staff at Highbury. So then my mother also said, well, how long is that? So he said, well, that will be 8 months, Mrs. Compton. 8 months and 4 months, that's 12 months. All right, the boy can go into sport.
Marvellous. You actually left school at 14?
14.
So education-wise, were you given extra education at Lord's or the Arsenal or not?
No, I picked that up.
Really?
I think so, yeah. I didn't have any further education.
I never regretted that.
Well, I wondered whether it was right at the time. I was not completing a full education, but it worked out well because as I became, fairly successful in the two games, I was travelling.
Right.
Went abroad.
Right.
Australia and went all over the country with football.
Right.
And I've always said that if you're prepared to look upon it as a teaching ground,
Right.
travelling is the best education you're going to have, apart from the classroom.
Right. Now tell us about the first time you were selected for England then. Now you're 19. You're the youngest ever player at the time to be selected for England. How did you know about that selection?
Well, I knew that they were going to select the team on the Sunday of that week.
It's against New Zealand?
Yes, and the test match would always start on a Saturday. So I'm at home in the sitting room with Mum, Dad, Leslie, my sister Hilda, myself, all there because they knew at 6 o'clock at night, the radio, the news, at the end of the news, they were going to name the team. So, of course, when they came to that, now the team has been selected, England versus New Zealand at the Oval, the last test, and this is the team. And when they called my name out, well, I had a very stiff glass of water after that.
Well, there must have been real hijinks.
Oh.
How did you cope with fame at that age? I mean, how did you picked up newspapers, saw your name in the papers, magazines? How did you cope with it, Dennis?
Well, I mean, I suppose I'm being conceited now. I used to love to read the papers, see what they said, of course. I think everybody does. And I always remember a famous footballer who I played with too, Alex James, who became a great friend of mine afterwards, always used to say to me, it doesn't matter what they say about you, as long as they want to write about you, Compo. He said that's the main thing, and they must think you're good, otherwise they won't waste time in mentioning your name too much.
And you played that first test match for you against Australia. You've got to say, now Bradman was in that side, was he?
Yes.
Don, the great
Mm-hmm.
Don.
He was the captain.
Yeah, now tell me about the great Don Bradman. Was he as fantastic as we all believe?
Oh yes, there's no question. I would say the greatest batsman there's ever been. And this year, at Perth, where he lives, Adelaide, where he lives, when we were having lunch together, I said, Don, I saw you in 1930, that's right. I think I'm right in saying 1930, when you scored 254 at Lord's against England when Percy Chapman was the captain. He said, did you? I said, I did. I said, I was aged about 12, I suppose, then. And he said, well, I'll tell you this, Dennis. He said, I consider that was the greatest innings I ever played in my whole career. And when you think of all the innings he played, scored 300 a day in a test match. He said, 254. I said, why do you say that, Don? He said, well, I hit every ball exactly where I wanted to, and every ball in the middle of the bat.
Like so many of his generation, the Second World War robbed Denis Compton of potentially some of the best years at the top, particularly his football career. Eventually, Denis was posted to India as an Army Sergeant Major in 1943, after initially enrolling with Brother Leslie as a special constable. There were some highlights, including meeting the Prime Minister before a wartime international against Scotland, a match that featured a mouth-watering forward line of Matthews, Mannion, Lawton, Hagan and Compton. However, his career soon resumed. So now you come back to county cricket, and I was interested, then you got selected for the 46-47 tour to Australia, right? Mm-hmm. And you went on the boat. In those days, you all went on a boat.
That's right.
Now, Dennis, tell us a bit about this, because this must be an unbelievable experience. Well, how long did it take?
4 weeks.
4 weeks?
Mm.
So what did you do?
Well, it was lovely, though, because, in a way, there was great rationing in England, and, we were short of food, but when we got on the boat, we didn't quite know what to expect, but the food was lovely. Once you got out of the Bay of Biscay, you got to the weather where the sun shone, and it was really gorgeous, and the food was out of this world. And by the time we got to Ceylon, we were sunburnt, used to do all that, practice in the nets, put up with cricket nets there on the deck, run around the deck. There's a swimming pool you could dive in and all that, and so we were terribly fit. We used to play one match at Ceylon, a one-day thing. We go back on the ship, and off we went to Fremantle. So eventually we get to Fremantle. There's no jet lag, you're bronze and so fit. Oh, I can recommend that for any cricketer today.
Compton was one of the first sportsmen to appoint an agent. Such was his popularity. And his relationship with the Brylcreem brand was particularly lucrative.
It'll be £1,000 a year. That's what they offer. That's a lot of money. Terrific. So I said, well, I don't mind. He said, you won't object to it? I said, no, I wouldn't. So I did, and I must say I had a marvellous relationship with Beecham's for many, many years after that. I wasn't embarrassed. People asked me and said, well, weren't you embarrassed about it all? I said, no, they were very nice indeed. And of course, from their point of view, because my hair when I was at the wicket was all over the place, they used to call out in their thousands, Dennis, where's your brill cream? And of course, that was a very good form of advertising from their point of view.
Now, you've met presidents and the Queen of England, and princes and prime ministers. Who has impressed you over your time about these people?
I must say that when I got, I was given the CBE at Buckingham Palace, Her Majesty the Queen said to me, Mr. Compton, how is your poor head? That took me back a bit. I said, no, my head's perfectly clear, thank you, Your Majesty. Well, she said, I remember, she said, when you got hit on the head at Old Trafford. She said, I saw it when television was in its infancy. I thought, poor chap, that must have been very, very painful. And that was 1948, and I didn't get the CBE until 1958. 7. Was it 48, 57? Nearly 10 years later. So she threw me there, but marvellous. And of course, she's a very wonderful woman.
Wherever you go, you're treated with the greatest respect, quite rightly so, but a lot of adulation. You're still a sort of a living legend. Is that ever embarrassing for you every morning you go back and think, I'm a legend? I mean, how does it work into a normal bloke like us?
Well, I mean, I can answer that very simply, I think, Brommers. In fact, by saying that I can't believe that they know me or recognise me now, and even go back and remember what I used to do. In fact, I'm very honoured that they do remember me from all those years after, as I say, 76. I'm an old man now, but I love that, and I'm deeply honoured that I'm remembered.
As a footballer, England captain Billy Wright described Compton as, without doubt, the best outside left of his day when he was on top form. But it was probably football that caused all the injury problems that dogged his latter years. The interruption of the war and overseas cricket tours restricted Compton to just 54 league appearances between 1936 and 1950. But the headlines prove that he was a classy performer. Now, in your football life, you're an Arsenal man through and through.
Absolutely, yes.
And Herbert Chapman signed you, didn't he, as an amateur?
Yes, as an amateur. Herbert Chapman was the amateur, and he was a wonderful man. He made Arsenal into the famous and wonderful reputation which they had then for many, many years. I think anybody who played for the Arsenal was very proud of playing for them. They had a wonderful tradition. Anybody was sent off the field, that was bad news. I remember when I was on the ground staff there in 1932, Arsenal were drawn against Walsall away in the third round of the Cup, FA Cup. There in the 4th Division, Arsenal, the glamour side of the world. And the result, which was a disastrous one, they lost 2-0, which was a terrible day for them as well. But it happens in cup-tie football. But Black, the fullback who was playing, he was sent off for a rather vicious foul in those days. Not very bad today, I wouldn't think, but then it was. And he arrived back in the ground on the Monday morning after the 2-0 defeat, when he immediately was sent for by Herbert Chapman, in which Herbert Chapman said, Mr. Black, you will never play and kick a football against Arsenal. And that was it. Never did. But I was very lucky and I was very happy to have been playing a generation of ball players. For instance, I had the great honour of playing a match with Alex James. He was too old, just about on the twilight of his career. I was in the second team, and then suddenly Bastin, who was the star outside left, was injured. Alex James was brought into the side, inside left, and I was outside left. Against Charlton at Charlton. Well, there were 77,000 people came to see Alex James because he was the maestro. And what a ball player he was. And of course, I sat next to him, absolutely overawed by the whole thing. And I called him Mr. James, which we used to in those days. And I said, Mr. James, is there anything I should do? He said, Dennis, stay out in the bloody wing. That's all. Just stay out there and I'll look after you. And I did as he was told. I scored a couple of goals. He was absolutely brilliant. Mesmerised them. Got 77,000 people, and we beat Charlton, who were then top of the first division, and we were about third. That was a terrific game. And I always remember him saying to me afterwards, he said, I always know when I have a bad game and when I have a good one. I said, oh, Mr. James, what's that then? Why do you know? He said, if I break sweat, I've had a bad game.
1950, Cup final, full house at Wembley. You're playing for Arsenal against Liverpool?
Yes, I was actually, Bromers, I was jolly lucky to be playing in that cup final. I got into the side because poor Ian McPherson, the outside left, had a couple of bad games. And I suppose I was playing quite well for the reserves. And then, to my astonishment, I came on the Friday morning, the team sheet, I'm in the side to play in the 5th round of the FA Cup against Burnley, who were then a great side anyway. I played in that, we won. We then played Leeds in the 6th round. We won that at Highbury, lucky draws. And then we played Chelsea in the semi-final of the Cup at Tottenham. Two matches. I mean, one was an amazing story. I thought, well, it's been marvellous. I've got a chance now playing in the Cup final. But after about 20 minutes, Chelsea were 2 up. And I said, well, goodbye to that. But anyway, in the last few minutes, I took a corner. Leslie, header, he went up for the header.
Brother Leslie.
Brother Leslie, yes. And he headed the equaliser about 5 minutes from time. So we had a replay and won it. Then the cup final, of course, against Liverpool. I didn't play very well in the first half. I don't know, I was exhausted. They talk about the Wembley turf being very tiring and exhausting. And I found it so. Anyway, I came in at half-time thinking, not very good. So Alex James would come to me, he said, come on, he said, what's wrong? And I said, well, I'm tired, exhausted, that grass and turf. Come with me. Took me in the dressing room, in the back where the showers were, gave me a nip of brandy. Alex James, who would be my idol, of course, and he was still a great Arsenal man then.
He wasn't playing in that game?
No, he was finished. But he used to follow Arsenal. He became an Arsenal man even when he was finished. Anyway, seemed to do the trick. Played the second half like a 2-year-old. And Reg Lewis got 2 goals, a great centre-forward. And that, of course, was a fantastic occasion.
On to the Wembley turf march Arsenal and Liverpool, 2 sides rich in tradition, to do battle for the Magic Cup. A Compton corner leads to Arsenal's first goal. This is how the cameras see the move, that is to set Highbury alight. Mercer is the man behind it. His lob goes to little Jimmy Logie, who passes it through for Reg Lewis to wham it in. Mercer is at it again, and another goal is on the way. From Peter Goring to Cox, on to Lewis, and it's there. And that's it. Another final is over, and the sporting world joins in Wembley's tribute to Joe Mercer and the men of Arsenal.
Compton, a cup winner. But it's back at Lord's, where his sporting career is documented and commemorated with some marvellous mementos treasured in the museum. Well, Dennis, here we are in the museum at Lord's. Marvellous memories here, for you particularly. Now, this is the most famous picture. This picture's probably been published more times than any picture of you, I should think, in your career, isn't it?
Yes, it was 1947, of course, when both of us got a few runs.
A great season. Well, that brings us across as we wander down here and looking at all these bats. And the great thing here now, Dennis, this is it. This is it.
Now what about it?
This is your bat, the 47 bat.
Yes, this is the bat, and it was I only used the one bat.
The whole summer?
The whole summer, yeah. So I must have been in reasonable form. You see all the cracks on where the ball is supposed to hit the bat. And I suppose they did with great regularity that year. Not always the case, but it was that year.
But that's extraordinary to have one bat. Why, I mean, these days bats break and chaps use 2 or 3 bats a season, don't they?
Oh yes, probably more.
Yeah.
But this is amazing because I haven't seen this bat for a year or 2 years probably, and I didn't realise what good condition it was in.
You're absolutely right.
Amazing. I think one could play with that now. And of course it's nice and light.
Yeah, well, that's right. You were saying about that. This is what? 2 pounds, 2 ounces. Yeah. Marvellous. Great memento. Right, now we're moving along. We're moving along here. And all these. Now here is the Overseas Blazer.
That's it.
The MCC
I
Blazer.
got my first overseas blazer in the tour of Australia, 1946. And I have to say, as all of us did anyway, when we put that blazer on, it was a terrific thrill.
It must have been. And that blazer's still the same today, isn't it?
Exactly the same today.
Really marvellous.
Very colourful.
Yes, terrific. And so we come along and we've got the most, well, I suppose this is the, well, I don't quite know how you describe this. This is your kneecap in a Japanese biscuit tin.
Terrifying sight. Oh, terrifying.
This was when you had the operation in 1955.
Well, yes, and I see it was addressed to Gubby Allen.
Yeah.
Gubby.
Look at that, Gubby Allen.
Sir
Gubby Allen.
And it was actually sent to him by the surgeon, Bill Tucker. And of course I got a phone call and Gubby said to me, "I've just received your kneecap." "I don't want the bloody thing." I said, "Nor do I, Gubby, either." And then it finished up in here.
Well, anyway, that was then, you had the operation and what, and then went and played the test match?
I did, yes, and I got 94 at the Oval against Australia.
With no kneecap?
With no kneecap, and anyway, they said to me afterwards, the surgeon and the selectors, "How do you feel?" Because the following winter, or the coming winter, we were going to South Africa to tour, a favourite country of mine. And I said, "Oh, marvellous, never felt a thing." But I was in very great pain at the time, but it got better anyway.
Well now, Dennis, this is the famous Ashes.
Well, I mean, ever since everyone came into the game of cricket, I mean, that was the thing we knew about right from the very beginning. You know, it's so traditional. The Ashes that's been played for since cricket began, 1876, I think it was, something like that.
And now you were 2 winning sides for the Ashes.
Yes, the first one was in '53 at the Oval. Len was the captain, Darrell Len, and I hit the winning run, which was lovely. And we had a few glasses of champagne that evening.
Great.
I can assure you. And including, which was marvellous about it, that you felt that the Australians were just as pleased as if they won the Ashes themselves. They came straight into our dressing room, Miller, Lindwall, Rapman, everybody, and they enjoyed the occasion.
Really?
Absolutely incredibly well.
Can't imagine that happening today, can
Not
you?
today.
No.
That was marvellous, yeah.
And then what? And then the
And then
next?
the next one was what we always would call it the Tyson Tour,
Yeah.
because Frank Tyson destroyed them, and we won the series 4-1 in Sydney.
And that was 50, 55, 56, 54, 55.
54, 55.
Yeah. So what a great thrill.
Great.
And playing for the Ashes means something to this,
yes.
isn't it?
They don't actually hand it to the
No.
captain.
No, it stays here the whole
It
time.
stays there all the time. But, you know, it's amazing when anybody comes here, say for the test matches, a lot of people come to view the museum and see it all. This is the first thing they walk to and see the Ashes. Just that.
Marvellous. Well, Dennis, the Holy of Holies.
Yes, Bromley, very, very exclusive. And really, I think it's a room that cannot be compared anywhere in the world.
Well, we're
as
very...
far as cricket is.
Not many people allow cameras in. They don't allow cameras in here, so it's a strict tribute to you, Governor.
Well, I'm not sure
But
about
we're
that,
here.
mate. I think you've been very nice today.
Right. Well, now then, we're going to have a look around the walls. There's one or two things I want to talk to you about, mate. Is that all right?
Yeah.
Okay.
You.
Let's wander this way.
Mm.
Now, there's a picture of a great homemate of yours, Keith
Yes.
Miller.
Keith Ross Miller. As you can see the pictures of him on the left and on the right, I mean, he was the most wonderful athlete. And why he was such a great all-rounder, we never used to think about it. I mean, one day I said to him, I said, Keith, how many paces did you take when you bowled, went back? How many paces? He said, I used to go back and turn round when I felt like it. And then when he arrived at the wicket, perfect.
And he was quick, wasn't he?
Ooh, when he wanted to be.
And a good batter.
And a magnificent batter.
Well, the famous chairs of the long room, Dennis. Now, you've sat in here and watched a few test matches, haven't you?
Oh, many, yes. And there we are. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That chair there.
What's the significant about that?
Well, that's where Neville Cardus used to sit every day when he came here to watch cricket. And he and I, well, I don't know, he was very fond of me, old Neville, and a wonderful man. And I used to sit there for hours with him, chatting about the game and his wonderful writing on the game and music.
Yeah. He didn't actually make notes here, did he? I mean...
Yes.
Oh, did he? He didn't know the press box?
No, yeah.
Really? Well, Dennis, have a seat. This is marvellous for me. Coming through those gates. Now, you've come through those gates 100 times, playing...
Hundreds of times,
Hundreds.
yes.
England, Middlesex.
And each time I did Bromers, it gave me a thrill.
It must have been.
And one was quite nervous coming through, especially with the members, absolutely, when the room was in there, the long room, chock-a-block, packed.
Right.
It oozed tradition and atmosphere and everything.
And you had to sort of fight your way through the crowd almost, did
That's
you?
right, and then walk down here, onto the hallowed turf, 25, 30,000 people.
Every schoolboy's dream, you know.
Lovely it was. It was
But tell me,
marvellous.
were you nervous about before an innings? Because it seems to me with your kind of character, you wouldn't worry you that.
Oh, yes. Every innings I played, whether it was a test match or county match, I was always nervous.
Really?
Yeah, I'd watch the bowling if I was the next man in for about 2 or 3 overs. Then I'd go off back into the dressing room and play shove halfpenny with the boys. We used to run competitions.
Really?
Yeah, and we became quite good at it too.
So then suddenly, but it was all in the tummy, was it? All the
yes.
nerves?
And then when you heard the roar, wickets fallen, pick up your gloves, bat, off you go.
Marvellous, marvellous. Now tell me, the old days, gentlemen and players.
Mm.
Explain this to us, because the gentlemen, this being the long room, used to come through here, didn't they?
Correct.
Now the players, when you were one of the players in those days, where did you come out of it?
Over there, in that corner.
Right.
And they're up there with the facilities and the dressing rooms for the professionals. And so when I walked out, I'd walk out there.
Right.
And I'd be met by the amateur who would meet me halfway.
You met halfway in the middle of the bit and then walked to the wicket
And then we'd
together.
have a really nice chat together. We never thought anything of it because we were brought up to it. It was nothing different about it.
Had you actually met them before? You met them before you came into the play. You actually didn't meet the first time you got on the pitch, did you?
Well, that day we would.
Oh, really?
Oh,
You didn't
yes.
actually see him
You
before?
weren't quite sure who was coming in the players, but it was you didn't laugh about it or anything. It was just a natural thing to take place during the course of a match in those days. You never knew any different.
They'd say it was archaic
But the
now.
amateur himself was a marvellous chap to us. I mean, if we did anything good, got 50 runs or a few wickets, down in the players' dressing room, the beer would be sent down to them. Well done and marvellous performance.
You come back from that wicket through 25,000, and the whole pavilion is standing. All the members are standing. It must be a fantastic thrill.
Well, that's quite true. If you've scored 100 or 200, and particularly test matches, I mean, the setting and the scene and the occasion was unforgettable, marvellous. But then again, on the other hand, I also did something rather unique as well. I walked out in a test match against India, and I was bowled first ball by Amarnath. So you walk out there and all the way back. That's an occasion which you want to forget.
Yeah, exactly. Marvellous stuff.
But good.
Marvellous stuff. Now, what, in your opinion, was the finest innings that you ever played here at Lord's?
Well, I remember E.W. Swanton saying it, but I think it was in 1938, the second test match here, when we were in a bit of a tight corner, and I was a young boy then, 19, and it was rather important that I could get them out of the scrape.
Australia.
Yeah, against Australia, sorry. And I scored 76 not out, and we, from being in a losing position, we got into a position where we could declare. And I really think that was, under sort of, as they say, pressure now, I think it was probably one of the greatest innings I ever played.
Compton saves England from ruin with a fighting 76 not out, and Australia is left with 315 to make in 2 3/4 hours. Painter keeps wicket in the absence of Ames, who broke a finger. Despite another century by Bradman, the match is drawn. A rush for souvenirs of the draw follows, and the destination of the Ashes remains as obscure as ever.
And I suppose the other one's got to be Old Trafford, when I got hit on the head when I was 2, went into the dressing room, taken to the dressing room, had stitches put in, went out and had a net, found I could see all right, came back, and the doctor gave me a brandy, which I didn't drink in those days, but I took that, and it was very nice too. And went out and scored 145 not out against the Aussies, against Miller and Limwall.
After a quick knock in the nets, Compton returned. Once again, he was England's salvation. Shaky and ill as he must have been, he played like a master. Here's the stroke that brought him his 50. Then he went on to make his finest test century. No wonder the crowd cheered.
Remind us about that innings you played in Benoni, was it? You were talking about innings that you remember in your career.
George Mann was captain, yes, and I went in there and sort of let go and kept on going, got 100 and got faster in the next one and got to near 200, all right. Then I thought, let's get out now. When I didn't, kept slogging them all over the place. I finished up with 300 in 181 minutes. But which is still extraordinary enough. It's the fastest 300 recorded. So that was all right. And they made me, what did they do for me? They gave me the freedom of the city in Benoni. If I go back there, the world is my oyster.
Here we are at Lord's, which is obviously your favourite ground in the world. What are your other grounds in the world that really impress you?
Well, the favourite ground and the greatest from the point of view of atmosphere, tradition, right here, Lord's. I love pretty grounds, really. I mean, I love Sydney. Not so much Melbourne, because it was such a vast stadium, you know, and you were lost in the middle of that huge stadium there. I loved Adelaide, a very pretty ground with the overlook of the cathedral. Then Cape Town, terrific. Newlands. That was absolutely marvellous. Yeah. And the cricket grounds here, I've always loved playing at Canterbury. Terrific. Maidstone, Worcester, Chesterfield. Very pretty. All the lovely pretty grounds. The best seeing ground, I would say, in England is Old Trafford. That was a wonderful seeing ground.
Now
Nottingham, sorry, I must have missed that. Very lucky ground too for me as well. Lovely ground.
One of the great batsmen of English cricket. You bowled, you fielded, but one of the weaknesses of your game, writers would say, is running between the wickets. These legendary Compton and what was all that about? Why didn't you run between the wickets properly?
I don't know. I know. There were so many times I got it wrong. I mean, when, as I say, Swanton described it whenever I was calling my partner for a run, it was purely and simply a basis for negotiation. And I think that was true too.
Well, tell us a story then about your brother Leslie.
Oh,
lovely
Leslie. That was disastrous.
Who came, had a benefit match here. Whit Monday?
25,000 people here too for him, and he deserved it. But you know, so I'm at the wicket.
Middlesex, Sussex is.
Middlesex, Sussex, which is always the annual fixture. Huge crowd, not a cloud in the sky. And Leslie comes to join me, the younger brother. I don't know what it was. I played a ball down to third man down there somewhere, and I, just to all intents and purposes, thought it was 2 runs. Little did I think it went to George Cox, who was then one of the best fielders in the world. He picked it up like lightning, threw the wicket down, Leslie's end, and he run out in his benefit without scoring a run. I didn't know what to do, and I was only about 20 at the time, runs. As he passed me, I said, oh, I don't know what to say, Les, because we were great friends. I said, but I am terribly sorry about it. I don't know what to say. He said, well, you can do one thing for me. He said, and I'll forgive you. I said, what's that? He said, get 100 for me today. But fortunately, I got 152, so I was thrilled to bits.
Marvellous story.
So he knows the benefit, and the sort of hats went round for him and all that. And he got a wonderful benefit there.
Right. Now, you were telling me earlier that when you joined the ground staff, Bill Edrich was on the ground staff, who became your great buddy.
Yes, he did, yes.
Great player.
Yeah,
Tell me this, remind me of this story, which I've loved. I've heard you tell me so many times on train journeys up and down the country, of when you and he were in Australia and Wally Hammond was the skipper.
Oh.
It was the eve of a test match.
Oh, yes. Well, that was an amazing... The day before, we were in the nets, and Bill said to me, I'm going off with a chum of mine, I'm going off, he said, but I'll be back. Of course, we have dinner before, we have a talk before dinner in the hotel before a test match. Wally Hammond was the captain, and Bill and I are sharing a room, as we did throughout the years we played together. And 11 o'clock at night, I went to bed, I thought, that's it, and have a good sleep. Bill hadn't come in, but I thought he'll be all right. I went to sleep pretty quickly. I woke up in the morning, the bed undisturbed next to me. I thought, oh dear. So I ruffled it and all that sort of thing and banged the pillow. And that was that. And then there was a knock on the door about 9 o'clock. I opened the door, it's the captain, Walter Hammond. Well, Dennis, he said, where's Bill? I said, Wally. Stunned me a bit, but I said, Wally, you must know what he does on the night, the day of a test match. No, I don't. What does he do? I said, he always goes for a run around the block, wherever he is. Likes to do that. Oh, does he? I didn't know that. I said, yes, he'll be running around the block. He'll come in and have breakfast. It's around about 9:30. Oh, he said, well, make sure he does. And remember, the coach leaves at 10 o'clock sharp. Dear, oh dear. And off he went. Anyway, Bill struggles in about 9:15. I said, Bill, get under the shower. He looked terrible. Bloodshot eyes, rough. And people thought, oh, what's he been doing? You know, so I said, what happened, Bill? Well, he said, I stayed the night with a great friend of mine who got a DFC in the war, and we were in the same squadron together, and I couldn't resist it. And of course, we talked about old times. I'm afraid I've had a few drinks. Never mind, I said, we're in the shower. Anyway, we got in the coach, and I thought, well, this is what we want now, is Wally to lose the toss, field all day, he'll recover. Sunshine will do the world of good. But no, that doesn't happen. Wally wins the toss. We bat. Bill was batting number 3. And I thought, well, if Washbrook and Len Hutton put on 150, that would be 4 or 5. Second over, Washbrook's out. Cyril Washbrook's out. In goes Bill. I wonder if he could see his way to the wicket. He goes there, and I thought, poor chap. Anyway, he struggles as if he'd never held a bat for about 10 minutes. Terrible. And suddenly, middle one. And from then on, I don't know what it was, but it was a miracle. But he played for one of the great test innings of all time. He got 117 against Miller, Lindwall, Johnson at their fastest. And he was incredible. I loved playing all my years at Middlesex. We had some wonderful characters. a lot of characters in those days, and the umpires were characters as well. And therefore, I played with a county that was full of fun, and I found it fun and enjoyable. And also I found it very, well, very... I was very happy when playing in the England sides that I did throughout my career. Love that.
Tell me something. In those days, was there this thing called sledging?
No.
Did the opposition players...
No, not sledging. But we would get the bouncers.
Yeah, but did anyone sort of keep
I never
shacking you the whole time?
I never experienced that in the whole of my career.
Why does that start?
Unfortunately, it does now. I don't know why it does. I think it's very regrettable that that has come about. I hope it's going to stop soon. We didn't get that, no. But very competitive. Oh, make no mistake about that.
But you'd have a competitive game, played in a good spirit, then you go and have a drink with the opposition and go out to dinner with the opposition, presumably.
Absolutely, and they would come in our dressing room after the game or after a day's play. For instance, Miller was one of my greatest pals, so was Liverpool. But when I was out there, they were bowling to kill me nearly, bowling at their fastest to get rid of me. But we were good chums. They'd come in and have a beer afterwards. That never happens today.
Sad, isn't
it? It is, I think so. Yeah.
So if someone said to you, Dennis, what do you want to be remembered for in your life? Is there any one particular thought or thing that you think about?
I'm in fact deeply honoured, really, which I can't forget, and I'm very lucky that every time I played, I got the most wonderful reception from the crowd that I'd won, whether I succeeded or I didn't. They used to give me an enormous ovation when I went out there. They knew something was going to happen. So I was deeply honoured by that. They took to me in that sort of way, the way I played, I suppose. That was good.
That's why you're a legend. Denis Compton died in 1997, fittingly enough, on St. George's Day, at the age of 79. As in his playing days, he attracted a full house, this time for a service of thanksgiving at Westminster Abbey. Over 3,000 people attended, led by John Major. Afterwards, the drink and the tributes flowed.
There's only sort of one Denis Compton in a million years, and I've only met one, and I doubt if I'll ever meet another one, I'm afraid. But it's a great day, and a day to celebrate as well as to pay our respects to the great man.
Well, I was lucky enough to bat with him in test matches, so I was able to see him from the other end, and the way he sort of waited and let the ball come right through, almost as you thought he'd not seen it. And then with a facile touch, he had with a light bat, the most beautiful facile touch of flicking it through the gaps in the field and bringing huge joy. No arrogance. I remember him hitting Toei Tapio for 5 consecutive balls before. Toei was just defeated totally, but Denis was totally relaxed and no sense of arrogance. And but I love that side of him. His wonderful mastery and no arrogance.
I spoke to Denis about the day before he died, originally from Australia, and he wasn't very good. You can hardly hear him, and you can't hear me too good. And I turned around, he said, I know you're coming over. I'll meet you in the long room where you have a couple of beers. And that's the last words. God bless him.
Well, he was my schoolboy hero, and I was privileged to get to know him as a friend, as an adult, and he was carefree, really, cavalier, all the best things about English sport, and he was extremely good at it as well, which often doesn't go with somebody who's terribly flamboyant and casual. I mean, he wasn't really. He was a very correct, brilliant sportsman, but he was brilliant and gave the impression that he was doing it for fun, which I guess he was.
A couple of years at the Oscar ceremony, you paid a special tribute to him. What was the story behind that?
Well, I was just at the Oscars and sitting through hundreds of extremely insincere acceptance speeches, and I thought, if I win one, who am I going to thank? Because everybody sounds so awful and insincere, and it just came to me as a flash. I thought, I'll thank somebody who really did mean a lot to me in my life. He didn't have a lot to do with my songwriting, but maybe he did. But it just, I said, I'd like to thank Denis Compton. And it got a slightly quiet reaction from the Americans, but then some people in the back row, who obviously were Brits or Middlesex members, began cheering. And afterwards, everybody was saying, who's this guy Denis Compton? What film was he in? But it was genuine, it was meant, because I just wanted to thank somebody who had given me a lot of great pleasure in my life.
I remember when the England women played against the Taverners at Ruislip, and Compo was captain, and he relegated himself down the batting order in order to enjoy the brandy after lunch, and he got this huge build-up when he came out to bat and sort of weaved or wove his way across the wicket, and unfortunately he was clean bowled first ball just as he was getting settled. Even the umpire didn't shout no ball, but he just roared his head off and went straight back to the hospitality tent. And he was a great personality, and he's a great supporter of women's cricket and made us feel as though we were something that should be recognised, and for that I was eternally grateful. I played against him at the Oval, and after we tossed the coin he gave me a kiss. He said, "Do you know, my dear," he said, "that's the first England captain I've kissed."
I once remember reading a piece by Neville Cardus about Denis Compton, and he said that the greatest tribute ever paid to Denis Compton was by a small boy who wasn't watching the cricket match but was playing, and when asked why he wasn't watching said, "There are no more Denis Comptons."
Holidaymakers at Hastings had a thrill when brilliant young Denis Compton neared his 17th century this summer to beat the record Jack Hobbs set up 22 years ago. When he swept the ball from man round to the leg boundary, the great feat was achieved. The game was held up as the players shook his hand. Robbins and Edridge came out from the pavilion, and South African captain Alan Melville joined in the congratulations.
44 more runs to get now, and Compton as Edridge's partner. Slowly but surely the score mounted. It was by no means easy going. The Aussies certainly weren't handing those ashes back on a plate after 20 years. Then, near the end, Hassett put himself on to bowl. Morris bowled from the other end, and here it comes. A 4 by Compton wins the match, the rubber, and the ashes.
By lunchtime on the second day, Compton and Edridge each had over 150. Together, the Middlesex twins put on 370 in a record stand. Here's Compton's 200.
Denis Compton, a genius with a cricket bat, who has contributed generously to the pages of British sporting history, whether as a cricketer or a footballer. Blessed with good looks and an easy charm, good company to all who've met him, a man whose sporting prowess has enriched the lives of millions. A man of Arsenal, Middlesex and England, Denis Compton, a sporting legend.